Hi, I'm Ivan Filby, and I want to talk about the gift of prophecy and how to steward that well. The gift of prophecy is one of the 9 gifts of the Holy Spirit that St. Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 12. And while he never defines any of these gifts, he does give us clues into the appropriate use of the prophetic gift. First, he says to this fledgling church, I don't want you to be ignorant about spiritual gifts or uninformed about spiritual gifts. And he says of prophecy, I want you to be eager to prophesy. He says the appropriate use of the gift of prophecy in the church is to strengthen, to encourage, and to comfort. He says that prophecy needs to be tested and that perhaps 2 or 3 people in a public setting might give a prophetic word, and then we need to pause so that they can be tested to know what is being said, what might it mean, and how can we apply it. Why do we need to test prophecy? Well, it's interesting. In an earlier letter to the church in Thessalonica, in 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 19 to 21, Paul writes, don't put out the Spirit's fire, don't treat prophecies with contempt, but test everything and hold on to what is good. Now, why would he say don't treat prophecies with contempt? Well, it's because prophecies is not God speaking directly to us. It's God inspiring the person with the gift of prophecy, who then has to figure out how do they communicate that well to whoever the audience might be. And if you've ever studied communication theory with encoding a message and sending a message and decoding a message and all of the noise, all of the things that can go wrong in between, you know how complicated that can be. And so what often can happen is that someone might give a prophetic word, but it gets mixed with something of the speaker themselves. So for example, I remember giving a prophetic word to my church at that time in Dublin, Ireland. And I have great confidence in the actual words I said were absolutely what the Lord wanted to communicate. However, I communicated that in a tone of anger and frustration that was going on in my own life, rather than the tenderness and compassion that the Lord had communicated it to me with. And I had to apologize to the church and said, look, that's what the Lord said, but that's not how he said it. I had to re-deliver the prophetic word with that compassion and that tenderness from the Father heart of God. And so that's why we have to test prophecies, because there can be a mix. I think it's also important that the person who actually gives the prophetic message does the first level of testing. And if I feel inspired to give a prophetic message, I go through 5 questions that I like to ask myself. The first question is, what is it that I think I see or hear, or if it's a word I can read, however the prophetic message comes, what is it I think I see or know or have heard? And to really look at that and examine that. So for example, if I see a prophetic picture or a small movie clip, I like to say, what colours are there? What's in the foreground? What's in the background? If it's a movie clip, what are the sequence of things? What are the order that things unfold? At that point, I'm not trying to understand what the prophetic message means. I'm just trying to observe what I think God has communicated to me. Step 2 is about what might it mean. And my rule of thumb is, unless the Lord has given me the interpretation, don't interpret it. Say to someone, as I was praying for you, I kept getting this picture that I think might be from the Lord, but it could be cheese pizza. I wonder, would you let me share it with you so that we can test it together? Well, that takes the pressure off you coming humbly before someone. And the danger of giving an interpretation if we don't have one is we can get it so wrong. So for example, if you saw a prophetic picture of a diamond when you're praying for an unmarried man or woman, you might easily assume that it means there's an engagement, or that person will start to date a significant other. There's a love interest of some kind. But that may not be the case. Perhaps the person actually stole a diamond and God's saying, hey, I know what you did, you need to give it back. Perhaps the person is an artist and had recently seen a diamond in the shop window with a ray of light coming through it, and just all of these glorious palette of colors coming across the shop front, and God reminding him, you need to expand your palette. Perhaps the person has got a cutting tongue, and God saying, hey, you need to be careful. Your tongue is cutting people like an industrial diamond. We don't know which. We mustn't speculate. A third question we need to ask ourselves is, do we need to give the prophetic message at all? Sometimes God will give us insight because he wants us to pray for someone, to know how to intercede for them. Remember in 2019, I attended the New Room conference, and I came with some students. And one of the students she was a petite young woman, and I just saw two of the taller students having a conversation above her head that didn't involve her. And I very clearly felt the Lord say, she needs to know that I never overlook her, and that I look her straight in her eyes. I so wanted to give her that word to encourage her, and every time I thought about it, I would get this check in my spirit that it's not the right time. It would have been a year later that I woke up one morning and just felt the Holy Spirit communicate, today is the day she needs to know that. And so I wrote it in a text message that this is a little message I got a year earlier at New Room. And she wrote back that night to say, you have no idea what that message means today of all days. I don't know the situations in her life, but I know in her response how meaningful it was to wait. The fourth question that I like to ask myself is, how can I communicate what I've seen, heard, in a way that the speaker understands? Now, people have different styles, and I would have to say I have benefited from people coming and saying, thus saith the Lord. That is not my preferred style, because it can be used in a very manipulative way. It can be used in a way where people feel, I don't have any room to test this. I like to communicate in a way that gives people an opportunity to test and to reject. So I'll say something like, as I was praying for you, I felt I had this picture. Can I just share that with you in case it's meaningful? We don't need to be loud or brash. If the Holy Spirit's at work, it is no less powerful and no less anointed if we speak softly and very, very naturally. And then the fifth question I like to ask is, are my motives pure? I'm always cautious if I'm speaking over someone from the opposite gender, for example, or if I'm speaking over someone I would like to know, a famous speaker or whatever, and I have to check myself to say, I want to make sure there's nothing in my heart that I'm prophesying to get that person to like me in any way. This is a gift from the Lord to bless that person, and I am just the delivery boy. I'm the bellboy in the hotel who gets to show them their room and carry their luggage, and that's all my role. And when we do that well, people know you brought the prophetic word and are thankful, but who they see is Jesus. Who they see is Jesus. And the gift of prophecy used well leads people to Jesus so that people might worship him and surrender more to him. And so they're the rules I like to use because they help us to use spiritual gifts in a way that are safe,